Yes.
Please be seated. If you would pull that right down onto the table in front of you, that would be great.
Is that okay?
Please state your full name and spell your first and last name.
My name is Victoria Mokelke. Victoria Danielle Mokelke. Victoria Mokelke.
Your occupation now.
I'm a college student.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Good morning. First of all, Victoria, can you tell us how old are you today,
I am 19 years old.
and where did you grow up,
In Palmer, Alaska.
and where do you go to school right now?
I'm attending college at the University of Anchorage, Alaska.
And did you also go to school in the Valley before you started college?
Yes, I've been going to school in the Valley since middle school, 6th grade.
And can you tell me your parents' names?
Crystal Mokelke and Adam Mokelke.
And do you have any siblings?
Yes. Lily Mokelke, Warren Mokelke, Damian Magnuson, and Charlene Alto.
Now, I'm going to be, obviously, I'm going to be turning your attention back to 2016, probably a little before that too. Then we'll get to after that also. Let me turn your attention to some names. First of all, David Grunwald. Did you know David Grunwald?
Yes, David Grunwald was my boyfriend from August 2nd, 2015 to November 13th, 2016.
And did you meet in school or just in town, or how did you meet?
When we met, David was going to Colony High School. I was going to Matsu Career and Technical High School. We had mutual friends. We met at a movie theater.
And when did you say you started going out with David?
August 2nd, 2015.
2015. All right. Now, in November of 2016, how old were you?
I was 17. David
And-
Grunwald was 16.
Okay. And because you were going out with David, did you also meet his parents?
Yes, Edie Grunwald and Ben Grunwald.
And was it pretty early on that you had met his parents?
Yes, Edie Grunwald picked me and David up, or picked me up with David at my mom's house for our first date on August 2nd.
So therefore, before November 13th, you were familiar with the Grunwalds?
Very,
Familiar with their house?
very.
Now, in November of 2016, what type of vehicle did David have?
David was driving a Ford Bronco.
And do you remember the colors of it or not?
The colors were brown and cream, I believe.
And do you remember the history of the Bronco, when he got it, that kind of stuff?
Yes, I can't recall the exact date when David got his Bronco, but his dad and him saw, I believe they saw the Bronco on the side of the road, and it had an ad on it of some sort. So they called the number, and David took it for a test drive, and of course fell in love with it, so they bought it.
And was that his first car?
Yes.
And was he and his father working on the Bronco? Had they done any work on the Bronco or not?
Yeah, it needed some work, so it was their project. They worked on it until it ran. It didn't run very well, but it ran.
All right. And did you spend a significant amount of time in the Bronco with David, going back and forth various places?
Yeah, he would pick me up to go on dates and to go to school and everything.
And where were you living at the time, in November?
I was living in Palmer and the Butte between my mom's house and my dad's house. I would spend week on, week off. One week at my mom's, one week at my dad's.
And which parent of yours lived in the Butte?
My dad, Adam O'Kelke.
And generally, you don't have to give me his exact address, but generally, whereabouts is his house in the Butte?
It's on Smith Road. It's Smith and Smith. There's 2 Smith Roads.
Okay. And how about your mother? Where does she live generally?
She lives in Palmer, close to Cars. In Palmer. I don't really feel comfortable giving away the exact address.
And so I imagine that you drove between your mother's house and your father's house on a number of occasions, right?
Yes, often, week on, week off, so,
So
you know.
what's the approximate distance between your mother's house and your father's house?
For drive, I would say anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes.
And did you usually take the same route as far as Palmer, Wasilla to the Glen, Glen North to Arctic, which turns into the old Glen, to Smith Road, the same, did you usually take that same way?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you were going out with David, did you meet any of his acquaintances?
Oh, yes, me and David were best friends, so we knew all of each other's friends, so.
And I'm not gonna ask you about everybody, but I'm gonna ask you about some names, because they relate to this case, okay? So let me run some names off, some names by you and see if you knew those people or not. I'm just gonna do them in a random order. So did you know Bradley Renfro?
I have never met Bradley Renfro. I've only heard his name.
And do you remember who you heard the name from? Was it,
I've only heard the name after David was murdered.
okay, so before November 13, 2016, never heard his name?
No, sir.
Right, oh, and just pick another name, Austin Barrett. Were you familiar with Austin Barrett?
It's the same thing. I had never heard his name before until the night after David was murdered.
All right, and the defendant that's on trial here, Dominic Johnson, did you ever meet him or hear his name before November 13th, 2016?
Today is the first time I've ever seen him.
Okay. Had you ever heard his name before the 13th of November 2016?
No, sir.
Right. Now let me turn to some other people. Eric Almendinger. Had you heard his name before November 13th, 2016?
Yes, sir.
And under what circumstances did David Grunwald talk about him?
Yes, Eric Almendinger attended Colony High School, where David attended Colony High School. They were acquaintances. I had met him very briefly, maybe a few times.
Okay, and because you were in a relationship with David Grunwald, are you able to tell us who his close friends were versus who his acquaintances were?
Yes.
Eric Almendinger, was he a close friend or was he an acquaintance of David's?
I would say an acquaintance for sure. Definitely not a close friend.
Had David, to your knowledge, had David ever been to Eric Almendinger's house?
Maybe once. Definitely only a very few times.
And let me turn your attention to the name David Evans. Does that name ring a bell?
Yes.
And did you know David Evans before November 13th, 2016?
No, I met him November 13th, 2016.
Had you ever heard his name before that day or not?
I do not believe so.
So and I'll get back to you about David Evans, but let me turn to that day with you. November 13th, 2016. Do you recall what day of the week that was or not?
That was a Sunday. I remember that because me and David and his mom and dad all went to church that morning.
Were you supposed to have school the next day?
Yes.
And where were you supposed to go to school the next day?
Matsu Career and Technical High School.
And did David have school the next day?
Yes,
Where was he supposed to be at the next day?
Matsu Career and Technical High School.
And what time were your classes starting, if you remember that next day? Early or?
Definitely early. I can't recall the exact time. I believe it was around 8 a.m.
And how about David's? Were they gonna start early also?
Yeah, school started for the same time for us.
I know this was a number of years ago, but do you have memory of what you did with David before he dropped you off at his father's house that day?
I remember it very well.
Okay, let's start out with the beginning of the day. What were you doing in the beginning of the day?
Well, I stayed the night at David's house. I had my own bedroom. David had come and woken me up, told me breakfast was ready. So Edie had made us a big breakfast before church. Church started at 11 o'clock, so we were probably eating around 10. And then after we ate, me, David Grunwald, Edie Grunwald, and Ben Grunwald all went to church from 11 to 12.
Did you go together in one vehicle?
Yes.
And what happened after church?
So me and David and Edie all wanted to go to a consignment event. It was called Consign 49. And that wasn't really of Ben's interest. It had clothes and furniture and things like that. So we dropped Ben off back at his home, and me and Edie and David all went to Consign 49.
And was that fairgrounds or the train depot, or where was that?
Yes, I believe it was in the Raven Hall on the fairgrounds.
And whose car were you in when you went there?
Edie Grunwald's.
And where did you go after that?
We went to a number of furniture stores in Wasilla. It was a hobby of ours. We just had an interest in furniture.
And after that?
We went back to Edie's house.
And was Mrs. Grunwald driving, or was David driving?
Mrs. Grunwald was driving.
And what happened when you got back to the Grunwald house?
David and I were studying because we had school the next day, and we watched Futurama for a while until dinner time. I can't really recall the exact time since it's been 2 years. I can recall the memories, though.
And you had dinner with them, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And what happened after dinner?
It was time for me to go home since the next day was school, so David offered to bring me home.
And did you have a curfew or not?
Not exactly. It was like, hey, it's time to come home now. And I said, okay.
And so this is around, what, 5-ish at this point?
I believe so.
So clearly it's not super late in the day, right?
No.
But do you remember if it was getting dark about 5-ish or before 5?
Since it was November, yeah, it was starting to get dark around 5 o'clock.
And as far as where you were supposed to be that evening, were you going to your mother's or your father's or both?
Well, I had to go to my dad's house. It was my dad's week, but I wanted to get my school clothes from my mom's house in Palmer.
And who drove you to your mother's house?
David Grunwald.
Now, was there a little bit of a change of plan as far as stopping anywhere?
What do you mean regarding me?
Like picking anybody up, giving anybody a ride?
Yes, David Evans had texted David Grunwald and asked a few times if he could give him a ride to Eric Almendinger's house. He wanted us to pick him up from, was it Pioneer Pizza? I don't exactly remember, but I believe it was Pioneer Pizza.
And did you say anything unusual about that or not?
No, I didn't know David Evans at the time. David gave rides to many of his friends, and
Objection is based on what?
In your experience as a teenager in the valley, was it unusual for teenagers to give other teenagers rides?
no, not at all. It was very common for teenagers to ask other teens for rides. Even if they don't know them, they would ask.
So is it typical that in the valley and everywhere, some teens have vehicles and some don't?
Yes, I didn't have a vehicle at the time.
And would you agree that getting a ride in November is better than hoofing it in November?
Definitely, I would not want to walk home on a cold night in November.
So you were saying that David and you picked up David Evans at Pioneer Pizza,
Yes, sir.
and was he on foot?
Yes, sir.
Was he walking when you first saw him, or was he sitting?
He was walking. He had described that he was at a girl's house, I believe.
And you knew where he wanted to go, correct?
Yes, he wanted to go to Eric Almendinger's house.
Now, and you and David were going to your mother's house anyway, correct?
Yes, so it was on the way there, so David said, sure, why not?
Do you know the distance between your mother's place and Elmendinger's house?
I would say a quarter mile. I think I mentioned previously a half mile, but I think a more rough estimate would be a quarter mile.
Right, so in your own words, just tell us, like, when you left Pioneer Pizza, when you, I mean, you and David driving, obviously, where did you go next?
Well, David dropped me off at my mother's house to get my clothes and things, so David Grunwald could drop off David Evans at Eric Almendinger's house. Oh, and pick up my sister. She was coming to my dad's house too.
So you were dropped off,
Yes.
and what did you see happen after you got dropped off?
David Grunwald said, hey, I'll be back in a minute. I just have to drop off David Evans. And I said, okay, see you in a minute.
And tell me, what was David wearing during this part of the day?
David was wearing a North Face sweater, a hoodie, some jeans, and his slippers.
Do you remember what color the hoodie was?
I believe it was orange.
And you said slippers. Was he wearing that all day?
Yeah,
Or did he change after church, or what can you tell me about that?
well, he wore shoes to church because you have to dress nice when you go to church. You can't wear your slippers. But yeah, he thought he was just going to be running, dropping me off, and coming home at the time. So he just threw on his brown slippers.
And did you saw David Grunwald and David Evans leave when they dropped you, after they dropped you off?
Yes, sir.
And how long was it before David Grunwald came back to pick you up?
A few minutes, between 3 and 5, I would say.
And which sister was going with you to your dad's place?
Lillian Mokelke.
Was David Grunwald alone when he picked you up?
Yes.
And did both you and your sister get into the Bronco?
Yes.
And tell me, where did you go next after you left your mother's house?
Well, after we left my mom's house, David mentioned he, I think, heard something. Something was wrong with the radiator, so we had to stop at cars. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but he had to fill up a jug of water. It was a milk jug, and put it in his radiator, I believe. I'm not sure how that works. I just know that's what he was doing.
Did you see him go into the car store?
Yes, he said, I'm just going to fill up my milk jug. I'll be right back. And I said, okay.
And when he got back, did he pop the hood on the Bronco?
Yes.
And did that block your view?
Yes, and I even if I did see what he was doing, I wouldn't have understood what he was doing.
And how long was he doing whatever he was doing when he had the hood popped?
Probably about a minute or two.
Did he put the jug back in the Bronco?
Yes.
Do you remember about what time that was? Or not? I'm not gonna,
I believe it was 6:12.
and then where did you go after going to cars?
We went directly to my father's house in the Butte.
Taking the same normal route to your father's house?
Yes, sir.
What happened at your father's house?
Well, David drove me there, and he mentioned he might go hang out with the boys at Eric's house. So I said, okay. He wasn't sure yet, though, if he was going to do that or just go home.
And what did you understand that to mean? Like, when he said the boys, which boys did you understand that to mean?
I thought Eric and David Evans.
And you say, how could you tell he wasn't sure whether he was gonna do that or not?
Because he had mentioned it, he had said, well, what do you think you're going to do tonight? And he said, well, David Evans invited me back to Eric's house, so I might go hang out with the boys, but I might just go home.
And did you know when his curfew was?
Yes, it was 9 o'clock.
Did you hear him, during the course of driving around with him, did you ever hear him call his parents and ask for an extension on his curfew or not?
Yes, I believe it was extended to 9:30.
So it wasn't a huge extension?
No.
And do you think it was because he was running late with you, or do you think it was because he was thinking about hanging out with Eric Almendinger and David Evans?
I think he was, it was because he was thinking about hanging out with Eric, so, and he had to say goodbye and stuff, and he had to put that water stuff in his radiator, so.
All right. And by saying that he was gonna, you having the impression he was gonna hang out with Eric Almendinger and David Evans, was your impression you were gonna hang out at Eric Almendinger's house?
Yes.
Had you ever been there or not?
No. No, sir.
Okay, so you got dropped off.
Yes, David dropped me off at my dad's house, and I wanted to give him a hug and kiss, so I gave him a hug and walked around his Bronco, and he rolled down his window, and I gave him a kiss, and I said, I'll see you tomorrow, I love you. And he said, I'll see you tomorrow.
And then he drove away?
Yes.
And you went inside the house, obviously, right?
Yes.
What happened at your house? You were getting ready for school, talking to your dad, what did you do?
Yeah, I spent time with my dad and my family, and I started getting ready for school, so, looking through my homework and things like that.
And when is your usual bedtime, or when was it back then?
I would probably go to bed around 10 o'clock.
Eventually, did you get some phone calls from people about David?
Yes.
When and who called you?
I believe I mentioned before it was around 10 o'clock. Edie began calling me and texting me because David had not come home yet, and he came home. If he was told to come home at 9:30, he was there at 9:29 at the latest.
Were you initially alarmed, concerned? What was your initial reaction to them saying he wasn't home yet?
I began to become concerned because it was unusual for him to be late, but I wasn't too frantic at this point.
Now, in the back of your mind, were you thinking that he told you he was gonna stop and hang out with the boys for a while? Was that going through your mind at all?
Yeah, I thought maybe somehow he lost track of time, which is still very unusual for David. But I thought maybe just this one time it happened.
Now, did Mrs. Grunwald ask any questions about where did you think David may be?
I believe so. I don't remember my direct response at the time.
Did you give her the names of the people that he said he may be hanging out with?
Yes, Eric Almendinger. I might have mentioned that we picked up David Evans. I do not recall.
Now, after you got a phone call from, how many phone calls did you get from Mrs. Grunwald?
I don't recall the exact number, but I can tell you it was several. She became, as the time went on, we all became very concerned.
And then eventually, did you start making some phone calls or start contacting people?
Yes, I messaged Eric several times. I found David Evans on Facebook and messaged him several times. I messaged David. I called David.
Yeah, now, let me back up. So,
Or David Grunwald.
yeah, let's talk about David Grunwald first. Did you have a phone?
Yes,
And it had texting capability as well as calling capability?
yes,
Did David Grunwald have a phone also?
yes,
And did it have texting capability?
yes, and calling capability.
And how did you two usually communicate? Was it,
A combination between texting and calling.
and how did you try to get in touch with David Grunwald?
I called him and texted him. I don't remember which came first, but I remember doing both several times.
Do you remember what happened when you called him? Was there a voicemail? What was the, what do you?
Yeah, it kept going to voicemail, and I wasn't getting a response through text.
Now, David Evans, was he on your contact list?
No, I had just met him November 13th that
How
night.
did you find his information, his number?
Well, I remembered his first and last name, and kids my age have Facebook, so I thought I would type in his name on Facebook, and I recognized his face, so I thought this must be him. So I messaged him through Facebook.
Through Facebook Messenger?
Yes.
And did you get some responses from David Evans?
I believe it took a long time. I don't recall if he got back to me that night, but I do not believe he did.
But did he eventually get back with you?
I believe so, yes.
And did he shed any light as to where David Grunwald may have been?
No, sir.
Did he verify that David Grunwald dropped him off at Eric Almendinger's?
I don't recall if he verified it or not.
I'll show you those things in a moment. Now, Eric Almendinger, you of course knew that David Grunwald may be going to Eric Almendinger's, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you get a hold of Eric Almendinger?
Through Facebook Messenger as well. I did not have him in my phone contact list, so I tried to message him several times.
Now, had you seen him before, know what he looks like or not?
Yes.
And did the Facebook photo matched his appearance as you knew it?
Yes. It was the same deal. I typed his name in on Facebook and messaged him.
And did he shed any light as to where David Grunwald was?
Basis of the objection?
And same argument we had at the bench, Judge.
Objection's older rule, but I'll note it for the record.
Did he shed any light as to where David was?
No, he lied to me several times.
Same objection.
Same
Overruled.
word, thank you. Did he say that he saw David Grunwald on the 13th or the 14th of November 2016?
No.
Did he say where he was? Same argument as we had at the bench.
Overruled, but noted for the record.
No, he lied to me several times. He said that he hadn't seen David Grunwald at all that night.
Did you sleep at all that night between the 13th and the 14th?
Objection, relevance.
Well,
Galacek?
I'm going into like what she did next, whether it was immediate or whether it was in the morning.
I'll give you some leeway, go ahead.
Fell asleep next to my phone waiting for Eric Almendinger to respond, but I believe he texted me very late, like between 1 and 2, and I woke up because of the ding on the phone.
And did you ever go looking for David Grunwald?
No, not that night.
How about in the later days?
I looked for him, yes.
And November, when David dropped you off at your dad's house on November 13th, 2016, was that the last time you saw David Grunwald?
Yes.
And while Mr. Stroh's looking at the photographs I'll show you, let me ask you, as to the people that we mentioned, let me go person by person. And I'm not gonna be talking about whether you've seen him in court, but I'm gonna be talking about whether you saw him after November 13th, 2016. Did you have contact with Eric Almendinger after November 13th, 2016?
Yes, I had messaged him several times asking if he knew anything about where David was.
But did you have personal contact with him?
No.
Or how about Dominic Johnson? Did you have any personal contact with him after November 13th?
This is the first time I've ever seen Dominic Johnson in my life.
Or the others, Austin Barrett and Bradley Renfro?
I have never seen them in my life.
How about David Evans?
I had seen him once, November 13th.
After November 13th?
I believe so, once. I saw him in Walmart, I believe, but I did not talk to him.
And was there anything unpleasant about that contact?
Yeah, he was
Relevance, Mr. Galacek?
Well, this goes us to the issue whether this was pre-planned or not by David Evans.
I'm going to object.
I'll grant the objection. Go ahead.
What's that, Judge?
I'll grant that objection.
Okay. So you saw David Evans once after this,
Yes.
but did not talk to him, correct?
No, I believe he was trying to intimidate me in some way.
Approach.
I'm going to stand at my microphone here, so you can, I'll be picked up, but I'm going to show you some photographs from a distance, okay? Turning your attention first to State's proposed exhibit number 17. Do you recognize this photograph?
That's David Benjamin Grunwald.
And State's proposed exhibit number 18.
That's David Benjamin Grunwald and we climbed up in a tree and took that picture.
I move for the admission of 17 and 18.
Any objection?
No objection.
So admitted.
Number 22, proposed.
I believe that's Eric Almendinger.
Move for the admission of number 22.
Any objection?
No objection.
So admitted.
State's proposed exhibit number 26.
I believe that's David Evans.
Move for the admission of number 26.
Any objection?
No objection.
Now I'm going to get into some photographs that you may not recognize. State's proposed exhibit number 23. Do you recognize this person?
Is that Dominic Johnson?
You don't recognize him from before November 13th, 2016?
No.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because there's been 2 years that have passed, so I want to make sure I show you these photographs. We'll put that one aside. State's proposed exhibit number 24. Do you recognize that exhibit? From before November 13th?
Not from before November 2016, but I believe,
You may want to approach real quick, Mr. Johnson.
And just so I'm clear, I'm showing you to see whether you recognize the faces from any contact you may have had with them before November 13th, 2016. Okay,
okay,
make sure so State's proposed exhibit number 25. Did you ever see this person before November 13th, 2016?
No, sir.
State's proposed exhibit number 27. Did you ever see this person before November 13th?
no, sir.
2016?
For the record, just want to show 167 or 170. I'm objecting to 167.
What is it?
For now, I'm showing 170, so I'm not on the other one yet. Victoria, can you look at today's proposed exhibit number 170, and can you just count for me the number of pages in that exhibit?
There are 5 pages.
And can you look at those 5 pages, just read them to yourself before I ask any other questions about them?
Yes, sir.
Tell me when you're done.
I have finished reading them.
All right, so on the pages contained in State's proposed exhibit number 170, do you recognize them?
Yes,
All right, are those the text conversations you had with David Evans?
yes.
I'll move to admit number 170.
No objection.
So admitted.
Now I'm turning your attention to State's proposed exhibit number 167. same thing, if you can first count out the number of pages that are contained in state's proposed exhibit number 167.
There are 6 pages.
And then, same thing, can you read them first to yourself? See if you recognize what they are without reading it out loud. Tell me when you're done, please.
Yes, sir. I read them.
All right. And so I'm going to ask you to identify what are those things, not without talking about what's specifically mentioned, but generally what is contained in that exhibit.
This is a conversation between me and Eric Almendinger where I asked him repeatedly several times where David went or if he knew anything about where David is.
And let me ask you some obvious questions. Were you part of the these text conversations?
Yes, sir.
And at the time when these were going on, November 13th, and was it the 13th or also the morning of the 14th?
It was between the 13th early morning, November 14th, and November 16th and 17th.
All right. And so you were one party to these conversations, correct?
What do you mean by that?
You were having these text conversations with Eric Almendinger, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was on the other side of the conversation, correct?
Objection?
Yes, sir.
Goes beyond, that calls for speculation.
Well, she
Their
is,
foundation, so.
right. You have texted before, correct?
Yes.
You had found Eric Almendinger's a way to get a hold of him, correct?
Yes.
He understood who you were, correct?
Yes.
And you understood who he was when you were having these
Yes.
text conversations, correct?
She has no idea who's on the other side, that's speculation.
I suppose it could have been the President of the United States, Judge.
I knew it was Eric Almendinger.
Come forward and let me see.
getting back to the text messages, do those look like your statements that were made on those during that time period, November 13th through the 16th of 2016?
Yes, these are exactly my statements.
Okay. And the subject matter of the conversation, is it the same subject matter that you recalled having during these text conversations?
Yes,
Okay. And the person on the other side, did you, I'm not saying whether in fact, did you believe that to be Eric Almendinger?
I believed it was Eric Almendinger. I still believe it was Eric Almendinger.
And from what, from the responses you got, do you believe the person on the other side was understanding what you were asking?
Yes, he understood that I was asking him where David Grunwald was.
And did you get any answers from him as to where David was?
No.
Objection noted, overruled.
I would move to admit number 170 at this time.
Object for the previous reasons.
Okay, objection is overruled, but noted for the record.
Thank you. And so when the person on the phone, who you believe to be Eric Almendinger, what did he say about whether he had seen David Grunwald?
For the record, I object to this line of questioning, but I think I made my objection known, but I won't object throughout these questions, but I do object to each one of them individually.
And I will note that so the record's clear.
Thank you.
May you ask that again, please?
Yeah, so you were asking about whether Eric Almendinger knew anything about David Grunwald's whereabouts, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when I ask you what were his responses, I probably should ask you to look at the document and give us his exact responses versus paraphrasing his responses. And to do that, you probably should tell the jury what question you asked to get his response. So let's just go through the pertinent ones about the honing in on the issue of whether he knew where David was.
Well, I asked several times throughout the night, hello, 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 hello. And finally at 11, I first texted at 9:55. He responded at 11:33, hey, question mark. And I said in all caps, oh my God, where is David? Is he with you? Is he okay? And Eric Almendinger responded, you're David, question mark? No, I didn't even see him today. Is he okay, question mark. Would you like me to continue?
Yeah.
So I asked, he went to your house with the other David, with David Evans. I'm referring to when David Grunwald went back to Eric's house. And Eric responded, only David Evans I was with today, and he just was at my house, and I didn't know how, LOL. And I said, are you sure? Because David's mom came to your dad's house. He said that you guys got in a truck and drove off, question mark. Is there any way to get a hold of David Evans? Is David Evans with you? Hello. And he said, David Evans isn't with me. He just showed up. And I said, and then he left? When? Your dad said you weren't even home. Is there any way to contact David Evans? This is an emergency. I'm super worried, man. He said, at my house. No, I am not home. I am at a friend's house in Anchorage, drunk as fuck. Sorry, it's Harb to type, spelled H-A-R-B. And I said, when did you see David Evans? Please answer. And I continued with, David's mom and I are really worried he crashed or something happened. And he said, I'll ask around, okay? That's sketch AF. I hope he is okay. And I continually ask where David is. I said, I've been asking everyone, when did you last see David Evans? Is he with you? Did he leave with David? Please answer, man. I'm literally scared he might be dead. Please answer me. Please, Eric. I need to know the last time you saw David Evans. Please, man, please. Please, man, this is really important. David might be in a death situation. Please, please, man. Hello, hello. Please, man, this is very important. Please, Eric. And he finally responded with, no, he got dropped off at my house. David was there for a minute and it was just him, and he never said he was with anyone, so I assumed he walked. But then I left an hour later or so, maybe more, I don't know. It's spelled I-O-N-O.
So did you take that to mean that he was referring to David Evans?
Yes. I've been so drunk all day, low-key. And I said, so did David come in when he dropped off David Evans? Or did he stop by later? Hello? No. And Eric responded, no, I never even saw him. And I said, how did you get to Anchorage? Hello? The cops want to know. I need to know everything, man. Please answer. Where's David? Please, if you know, please, please tell me. Your dad wants you to call him immediately. Hello, please answer. Hello, did David drive you to Anchorage? Eric responded, I didn't even hear about him till you brought him up today. No, he didn't. I got a ride with my nig. And I said, David's mom told me to tell you your dad said to call him ASAP, as soon as possible. And November 14th at 11:57, he said, oh, no K, spell N-O-K-A-Y. And then he said, psych, okay, maybe I'll call him. He's been hitting me up, but if I hear anything about David, I'll let you know, okay? And I said, please, thank you. He said, you got me worried now. Shit, no, thank you. And I said, yeah, man, just please let me know if you hear from him. Does David Evans have a phone? I tried messaging him. Please, thank you. Oh, that was the previous conversation. And I said, yeah, man, just please let me know if you hear from him. Does David Evans have a phone? I tried messaging him on Facebook. And he didn't respond to me. So a few days later, at November 16th, at 4 a.m, I said, hey, man, if you have any details on the night David went missing, please, please just tell the cops. I haven't slept in days. I had to take sleeping pills every night, but obviously they don't work too well. I'm completely heartbroken and lost. I just want to know my baby is safe. He didn't respond until November 17th at 12:46 p.m. He said, the cops have all the info I had, and if you want to talk to them, I'm not sitting for an hour explaining it all for a second time. David's mom will be told by the cop the info I had. All I know is apparently he drove off David Evans, but I never saw him that day or at all in the past 3 weeks.
He drove to drop off David Evans? I think you missed a word if you were reading. Can you read that again? All I know, the last part.
All I know is apparently he drove to drop off David Evans. I believe he was referring to David Grunwald dropping off David Evans.
Right.
But I never saw him that day or at all in the past 3 weeks. No, he did not drive to Anchorage. He didn't even know I was going there. And he had a curfew apparently. And last time he had a curfew and he was there. He left an hour before just to make sure he was home on time. he wouldn't have ignored it to take me to Anchorage, LOL.
Thank you.
You done, Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Stoll.
You asked about a series of people who you knew or didn't know, is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, you were asked about a number of people who you knew and didn't know, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You knew Eric Almendinger, is that right?
Briefly.
And you at one point went to high school with him, is that right?
No, sir.
But you knew him through David?
Yes, sir.
And
David
you knew that-
Grunwald.
And you knew David Grunwald had been to his house before, is that right?
I knew that David Grunwald went to Eric Almendinger's house.
Yeah, before November 13th.
Yes.
So you were aware of that. Do you know who David Bell Gleason was?
Sorry, David Bell Gleason?
Yeah.
I know the name Bell Gleason, but I don't recall a David Bell Gleason.
But you heard the name before?
Like I said, the name Bell Gleason sounds familiar, but a David Bell Gleason in particular sounds unfamiliar.
Did David Grunwald talk to you about who he was texting?
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Well, when he would do a text, if you'd send a text and you were with him, would he tell you who he was texting?
If I was with David and David was texting other people, would he notify me if he was texting other people?
Correct. For example, you knew he was texting David Evans that night, is that right?
I believe so, but if he was texting someone, I wasn't asking him every time, who are you texting? And he wouldn't tell me every single time, oh, hey, I'm texting so-and-so.
All right. So you were aware, though, that he was texting David Evans that night, is that right?
Yes.
And you hadn't met David Evans before that night?
No, sir.
And you never met Dominic Johnson before?
I've never met Dominic Johnson before today.
And you knew that night, you believed that David Grunwald might go over to Eric Almendinger's house, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that was something that he had done before?
Yes, sir.
I don't have any other questions.
Any follow-up?
I don't have any follow-up.
Okay, you can step down, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it.
Judge, we do have our next witness here, Trooper Green. We can do 10 minutes with him.
Okay, may as well. But he'll have to come back after lunch, you know.
Yes.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give this case and other place where is the truth, the whole truth,
I do.
please state your full name and spell your first and last name.
It's Christopher Green, CHRISTOPHER, GREEN.
What's your current occupation?
Alaska State Trooper.
Go ahead, Ms. Owen.
Trooper Green, how long have you been with the Alaska State Troopers?
Since August 5th of 2007,
And what is your current assignment there?
the patrol in the Matsu Valley
And how long have you done that for?
for 11 years.
And can you just briefly describe to the jury your training with respect to becoming an Alaska State Trooper?
Sure. I went to the Public Safety Academy back in '07. I did have a 4-year absence due to military service, so I went back for a second time. During that, so I was trained in do investigations, speed enforcement for traffic, domestic violence cases, assault cases, theft cases, burglary type cases, as well as receive reports of missing persons.
And what is your, when you say you're on patrol for the Mat-Su Valley, what does that entail? As
That
far
entails anywhere from north up to Talkeetna, up past Sutton, the Butte, Palmer, Wasilla area.
And what types of calls do you respond to in patrol?
Pretty much a variety of types of calls, that being, like I said, theft calls, burglaries, assaults, criminal mischief type cases, missing persons, as well as conducting speed enforcement traffic.
And before I talk about November 2016, at the moment, you have a particular shift that you work, your hours?
Yes, I typically work day shift,
And what hours are those?
from 6 till 6 p.m. Currently, I'm on light duty, so I'm Monday through Friday from 8 to 4.
So drawing your attention to November 13th of 2016, were you on that same day shift at that time?
Correct, I was.
And how was it that you became involved with the investigation in this case?
The initial call came in just before midnight on the 13th to Trooper Steen. I came on shift at 6 o'clock that morning and got briefed from Trooper Steen about the missing person case.
And who was the missing person that you were briefed on?
David Grunwald.
And when do you recall that, you said before midnight, when do you recall that missing person report?
It was listed, came in at 11:58 p.m.
And so, another trooper was assigned as, initially as the investigator?
Initially, yes.
And then, what do you do next as far as your role in the case?
I took case responsibility after that point. After I got the briefing from Trooper Steen, it was relayed to me that David Grunwald was had a 1995 blue Ford Bronco with the license plate at JFM 910, that his parents had reported him missing.
So that was November 14th, at 6 a.m.? So is that the
That
following
is
day?
correct.
And at that point, the missing report had just come in
Correct.
earlier, midnight?
Correct. At midnight. So approximately 6 hours later, when I came on shift, I took responsibility for the case.
So how would you characterize the urgency of the investigation at that time when you came on shift?
Pretty urgent, due to the fact that, based off the information that I had, that David Grunwald was never really tardy to,
Goes to the basis of the investigation and what steps he took next.
Okay, but be careful.
So, continue on.
that he's usually on time and not late.
So who did you contact first or next? What did you do first in your investigation?
I was informed by Trooper Steen that basically he had been with his girlfriend, Victoria. I'm not sure if I get her last name correct, but Moliki so I ended up contacting her. It was informed to me that he had been with her and that he had dropped her off at an address at, I believe it was 865 North Smith Road in Palmer, which is out in the Butte off the Oakland area.
So you contact Victoria by phone?
That is correct.
And without telling me what Victoria told you, did she provide information that caused you to do anything else in the investigation?
That is correct.
And so what did you do next?
I followed up with David Grunwald's mother, Edith, and contacted her, and she provided me with some information about a friend of his via Facebook message.
And who was that?
That was going to be David Evans.
And what did you learn that directed your investigation from Ms. Grunwald regarding David Evans?
She had reported to me that David Evans, she'd been in contact with him via Facebook Messenger, asking where David Grunwald was at, and I advised her that didn't know where he was. Therefore, shortly thereafter, there was no more communication after the Facebook message. Then after that, I ended up locating a phone number for David Evans' mother and contacted her.
And did you gather any further information from contacting David Evans' mother?
The only additional information I gathered was that her son, David Evans, and Christopher Evans had dinner with her that night, and that Christopher Evans, her son, left with his brother David and had taken him to some location unknown, at which turn I ended up contacting Christopher Evans by phone.
At any point early on in your role, did you have information regarding Eric Allmendinger?
I did.
And what did you do with that, if anything, with that information?
I attempted to contact his dad, Rodney, which in case I did, contacted Rodney Allmendinger. I was informed basically that Eric Allmendinger possibly received a ride from David Grunwald to Anchorage.
And so were you attempting to talk to Eric Allmendinger?
I was.
And were you ever able to have a conversation with him?
I was not.
Did you make further attempts to locate the Ford Bronco?
I did.
And where did you go to looking for the Ford Bronco before it was eventually located?
I went first to Eric Allmendinger's residence, which I believe the address was 780 Etsy. I went to that area and went through the entire neighborhood, up almost every street, looking for the Ford Bronco without success.
And did you go anywhere else?
I did, after I learned, after talking to Christopher Evans, he said he dropped his brother off in the area of West Side in Lexington. He didn't know exactly what house he had went to, but I went and canvassed that area looking for the Bronco as well.
That may be a good spot.
It's a good
right?
spot, yeah.
All right, we'll recess for our lunch. Report back